So in the last episode, we finished our second button. We've seen how to have objects refer to each other, how we have scripts refer to other objects and other scripts. We learned a little bit about generics and stuff. And this time, we're going to learn a little bit about assets and prefabs. And so what I've done is I've rearranged our um, interface a little bit. I stuck the buttons off to the side, put the text off to the side, and left the center where we can actually put some stuff together. And what we're going to do is we're going to put together kind of a slot machine roller window, just one of the slots, not the whole thing. But we're going to create a prefab so that later on, when we want to create multiple windows, we can just use the prefab for one and use it to make three different instances of it. So here's the idea. And what I've done too is I've also cleaned up a little bit, added two new folders. One is going to be for the images that we're going to add, and the other one is going to be for the prefabs that we create. So here we go. So I'm going to open up the images folder, and I'm going to import these assets. Okay, and so this will be kind of dull and slow because this isn't a package. You can actually package assets and stuff, but I decided not to. I decided that I would just bring these assets in one at a time. And so what I'm going to do, it's not going to let me drag it in. So I'm going to have to select and say import, and it puts it in there. And then I will have to do it again, and I'm going to have to do it 8 times here. So bear with me. I'm going to pause and put these in. And all right, I've got these imported now. This is not the only way to import stuff, and we will be talking about importing assets and packages at a later time. But for right now, these are pretty small, and there's not that many of them, so I just imported them by hand. It's a pretty easy way to do it. Okay, and these are just images that I found, and I'm going to use to make this little slot machine window. And this is going to be a pretty primitive simulation of a slot machine. Rather than seeing the images scroll as they roll past the window and stuff, it's just going to swap them in and out in an order, and it'll stop at a random location and stuff when we get all done. And that's going to take a few of these videos to get done. But we're going to start here with, first of all, learning that, yes, we can bring in assets of any type that we want. So we can import images, we can import videos, whatever else we want. And notice over here in the inspector, there really isn't, it knows that it's an image, but it's not a user interface image yet. And so it's not going to be really useful to us as far as just dragging and dropping into our picture. So that'll be the next thing we want to do, is we actually want to create a new item here. So I will create a new, create an empty item. And I'm going to call this slot window. Okay. And so that's just a game object now that I can tack everything onto. And then what I'm going to do is inside that game object, I'm going to add, well, actually, I would like to add a list of images, but I don't have those. So now I'm going to add some new things here. User interface image. Okay. And I'm going to call that one, I'm going to give it the same name as the image name because it's just easy to refer to. So slot apple. Okay. And because this is an actual UI image, now I can drag this source image over there, and it's happy. We'll talk maybe later about materials. At this point, we don't really need to bother with materials because what we have is enough. But materials are ways to modify image. So you can think of them as filters. They can add shine. They can add metallic look, that kind of thing. They're basically modifiers to your basic image. Okay. So we'll get back to materials at some other point, or you can investigate those on your own if you're interested. And so you can see it drop the apple in the center there. And I'm going to keep creating new. So I'm going to create, again, these are user interface image. Okay. And I rename the image to match what it is I'm doing. So the next one is slot bar. And then I drag the bar over to the source image thing. And that makes the image, the actual image, a user interface image that Unity can deal with. Okay, so I got 6 more of these to go. Once again, I'm going to pause and just finish these up for you. Okay, so I've created the rest of the images. You can see them there from slot apple to slot 7. And they're not actually associated with anything. They're just hanging out in the middle of this project here. And I really want them associated to the actual slot window. But the other thing I wanted to show you first is if I wanted to use these images in more than one place, I'd have to create a new image instance, name it something. That gets to be a problem. And so the way we deal with that is we create prefabs. And so I'm here, I've opened up the prefab thing. You can create prefabs straight from inside here, but that is kind of the awful way to do it. The easier way to do it is to go ahead like I've done and create your the object that you're going to make into a prefab, and then just drag it into the prefabs folder. And you'll notice now, notice how the icon changed. This blue solid cube is the icon for prefab, and slot apple is the name of the prefab. This slot apple is an instance of that prefab. And so if I add slot apple to more than one object, make it a reference to some other objects or whatever, each one gets its own instantiation, but they are all pre-built, so I don't have to pre-build this again. So this is the easy way to create prefabs, is to create the thing that you want to make into a prefab and then just drag it down into the prefabs folder, and Unity will automatically do the work for you. All right, once that's done, I really have no use for those standalone prefabs like that, so I am just going to get rid of them. And notice I got rid of them there because that was just the instance, but the actual prefab classes are still here. And when you look at them, you see, oh, they're a prefab that happens to have the image inside it. Okay, so that's really what we wanted to do. Creating prefabs for these images is kind of overkill because I'm not going to use them really anywhere else. But what I am going to do is I'm going to use them inside that slot window, and then later on we'll make more than one slot window so that we have our actual series of slot windows like a real slot machine. Okay, but this is the first step. We wanted to do that. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is I want to create the script that actually associates these all with the slot window. Okay, so I'm going to do that now. Go to script, create a new script. This should be getting familiar to you now. So, right click in the project and you get the context menu, create C# script. And I'm going to call this, what am I going to call this? I'm going to call this slot roller. There we go. Okay. Oh, I already had a slot roller. Slot roller 1. Okay, cool. I thought I'd gotten rid of that script because I tried this out earlier. But that's all right. This saves me a bit of typing. So let me go through and open this up and explain to you what all the parts are. So in the meantime, I can get rid of this duplicate because it's not doing anything for us. Okay, so yeah, it's going to take a moment to get rid of it. And I open up slot roller. There it is. Okay. And I get the usual thing when I created this of it has the first three using statements in there, and it has start and it has update. And I added, because I forgot the previous time, I added the using Unity Engine.ui because we are using the UI features in here, the image features. Okay. And then I created a list. And a list is another one of those things that uses a generic. You can create lists of any type, and in this case, I'm creating a list of images, image being the Unity image, okay? And so it will, and I'm making that public, so it's actually going to let me decide what things go into this list, either programmatically or from the inspector, which is kind of important. So, and I'm just going to call it images because this roller is going to have all those images in it. And then I'm going to create a private list index so that I can index into it. I don't make that public because the index into the list is nobody else's business. Okay, when you're doing object-oriented design, you try and encapsulate stuff. So the index into the list, nobody else's business. Okay, what the what this script will give is it will randomize the list. Well, not randomize the list, but it'll roll through the list and give you one back randomly. Okay, and that's really all it does. And so you just need to trigger that. So that's going to be the one big function in this script. And you also will probably want to have something that says, what is the current thing in the window? And so there will be a getter in here. Everything else is pretty straightforward. So update will probably not get used, but I do have start because I want to initialize this thing. And so what that's going to do is it's going to do a loop count, a for loop from 1 to whatever. And actually, I should make that 0 to whatever. Okay. And so that will, it says images.count. So it knows how many things are in the images when it gets to this point. And it says, okay, I'll loop through all those things and I'll make sure that they're disabled so you don't see those images because you don't want to see those images. You only want to see one image at a time. And that image I just set randomly to 5. When we actually get into this, we'll probably set it to 0 to start with, but I'm going to make that one true so that that will be the only image that we see up there, okay? And that's enough to get this thing started. And so I'll go ahead and say File, and I will save it. And we've seen this before, and I go back to this, and it compiles the scripts and makes sure I didn't make any mistakes. Okay. And there are no errors listed down here or anything, so that's all good. And now I'm actually ready to associate this script with this slot window empty object. So I'll click on the slot in thing, and I have two ways to do this. I can do add component, or I can just drag the script over here. And when I do, you see that the script is associated, and there's an images item here. The list is empty, but it allows me to add stuff to it. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Prefabs, and I'm going to add those images, just like that. Add another one. Actually, I'm just going to add the whole bunch of them. So there should be up to element 7 total. So sidebar, slot bell, slot cherry, slot grape, slot heart, lime, and finally 7. Okay, so it was just that easy to associate those prefabs now to this list, and it doesn't show up, because they aren't children. They're associated through that script, and that was why I wanted to make that list public so I could actually do this and associate these lists. I could also, in the script, dynamically add more images if I wanted to, but that's not going to happen for this particular class. Okay, and that's good enough. Now, when I run this, then it should run that script because it's been instantiated. Okay, and when it runs the script, it should print out, or it should show the fifth element, which is the heart, in the middle of this. So let's see what happens. Did I forget anything? I have a feeling I did, but maybe not. We'll see. And I'm perfectly happy to have errors as I do this kind of stuff so that you can see the types of things that go wrong and how to fix them. And okay, so here it didn't actually display the heart. So I kind of have to wonder why. What did I forget? So I've got the script. The script is part of the canvas. So let me look at this for just a second. Okay, so I think the problem is that when I created the prefabs, when I actually created the images, I inadvertently disabled the image, and I don't recall doing that, but they are disabled, so I am going through now and enabling them. Okay, that's grape. That's heart. Okay, so they should be visible now. Once they are associated. Let's see what happens. No, somehow that wasn't it. So still looking. So the problem is that I created the packages, or excuse me, the prefabs, and got rid of the instances that were down here generically and forgot to make them part of the canvas. And so that's what I'm doing now. So let's see, apple, bar, bell. And so you notice where the blue line is tells you where it's going to insert. And I actually want to make it a child of the slot window because this whole thing is going to be a prefab. So I want these to be children. And let's see, cherry. Okay. And let's see, we've already got, don't have grape. Okay, we do have heart. We do have 7. We don't have lime. That should be the 8th one. Okay, so now they're all there. And the other thing I want to do while I've got them here is I want to go ahead and set them active the first time so that you can actually see. That one's already active. So you can actually see that the script does select the one, disable them all, and then select the one that you want to be active to be the active one. Okay, so they're all currently active. Go ahead and save this. And then I'm going to go ahead and run it. And when I do, and it instantiates, here it comes. And so you'll see the toggle text button goes blank. And for some reason, okay, one other problem. It's still pointing at the prefabs in here. And I actually want it to point at the instances. So I go to slot window again, and I just drag those all over there. So apple, bar, bell. Okay, what's next? Cherry. Okay, and then after cherry is grape. And then heart. And then lime. And finally 7. Okay. And while it doesn't look like anything changed, what really happened was I swapped out the prefabs and put in the instances instead. And so let's see if that didn't fix this. And there it did. Okay. So now you can kind of see the difference between the prefabs and the instances. And you see the things that you need to do to put all this together. Now, what I'm going to eventually do is we're going to expand that script so that it actually sort of animates. It's not going to do the scrolling, but it will do the swapping of the images in an ordered fashion so that it looks like it's scrolling through. And then we're going to turn that whole thing into a prefab, and then we'll be able to create as many slot windows as we wish to. Okay, so that's what's coming up next.